Are you somebody that struggles with a lot of doubt and double-mindedness when it comes to manifesting your desires? Are you somebody that finds yourself back and forth between feeling calm and feeling confident, followed by feelings of anxiousness and frustration and worry? If you answered yes, rest assured, you are not alone in this. In fact, doubt and double-mindedness are single-handedly the biggest obstacles we face when it comes to the process of conscious manifestation. Virtually everybody has these experiences at some point or another on this journey, especially when all of this is new. So today I want to talk about what I did personally to overcome these fears and doubts that I had, because like many of you, I had them too. And I want to break down exactly what I did to finally overcome my fear of failure and disappointment, and how I was able to build my faith and eliminate doubt for good. By the way, hi, I'm Missy Renee, and on this channel we talk all things manifestation and the law of assumption, so if that's a topic that you want to learn more about, then definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon for notifications, and if you enjoy my content, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. If you're interested in any of my resources, such as my coaching programs, my workshops, or masterclasses, I got links to all of that down in the description box, so don't forget to check that out. The reason that doubt and double-mindedness is so tricky in this practice is because it's not just doubts themselves that create an obstacle, but our fears of our fears and doubts that create more resistance as well. And let me explain. One of the very first things that we learn when it comes to manifestation is that we must be faithful to our end state. We must persist in going to the end until we are no longer double-minded. And for those of you who may not know what double-mindedness is, it's essentially when we are going back and forth internally, where we waver between feeling strong and feeling confident in what we desire, and then having those constant nagging feelings of uncertainty that shortly follow. One minute we're feeling great, the next minute we're feeling very anxious and unsure that any of this is going to work, that we're going to see any results from this. And from that double-mindedness, we then become more fearful that we've just ruined or delayed our manifestation. So it becomes this whole thing and a vicious cycle in and of itself. And while it is true that the ultimate objective here is to overcome double-mindedness and doubt, I also really need to stress the point that it's okay to have doubts. In fact, you're going to. Having a moment of doubt here and there is not going to blow up your manifestation. We often think that manifestation is only going to work if we are 100% certain. We often think that it's only going to work if we feel completely solid, confident, and unshakable in our faith. And it really becomes something that hinders us because we have this idea that we have to be perfect. In fact, a lot of people give up on their manifestation because they believe that their doubting is canceling it out and that they're failing at this. They believe that one moment of fear, one night of uncertainty and wavering, or one negative thought has completely canceled out everything that you have been focused on. But this is not how creation works. If that was the case, nobody would see anything come to pass because, once again, we all have these moments. It is universal, especially before we fully come into trust and faith in the law of assumption itself. Before we really come into our faith that we are, in fact, the operant power, we're going to have these moments of doubt. This isn't about being perfect and confident and living from the end 100% of the time. This is about returning to that state, that desired state, as many times as needed. It's returning to the state of the wish fulfilled until that state becomes your dominant state, until it feels like your home base or what is natural to you. Because what creates isn't just a fleeting thought. It is your dominant state of consciousness, the dominant beliefs and assumptions that you hold. And that state doesn't crumble and disappear just because you had a weak moment. For myself personally, I spent many a days beating myself up because of a weak moment or because I had a bad day. I thought to myself, you just ruined it. Great. Look at you go. I held myself up to such a ridiculously high standard that no person is actually going to be able to meet, because in my mind, I had to be perfect. I had to be unshakable and living from that end, or it was not going to happen. What I quickly realized is that doubt itself is not the enemy here. It is feedback. It's evidence that something within you is being restructured. It's aspects of your old state or your old self-concept that have not fully conformed or come on board with the idea of whatever it is that you desire. And we want to learn to take it as that, not like some big sabotager, but just indication and feedback as to any part of you that is still identified with that old narrative and that old identity. It's just a reflection of the parts of your self-concept that haven't caught up yet to the new you, the new state. And when you start to shift that perspective a little bit, you stop seeing doubts as something that is sabotage and something to be rid of, but the parts of you that need that little bit of extra assurance. You almost become more compassionate to yourself and the parts of you that still hold on to that fear. Because this radical transformation of self that Neville speaks about is rarely something that comes immediately and overnight and on the first try. As I mentioned before, but it bears to be repeated, creation does not require us to be perfect. It requires persistent assumption. And a good way to look at this is to think about an actor playing a role. At first, that role is going to feel quite unnatural. They'll forget their lines, they may overthink, they may try to force themselves, but with the repetition and stepping back into that role, something begins to shift. And that role stops feeling so much like you're acting and begins to feel more and more like who you naturally are. This is effectively what we're doing when we practice going to the end. You're rehearsing that feeling and becoming more and more acquainted with it. You are acclimating to a new feeling, to a new state of consciousness entirely. And of course, at first, this is going to feel unnatural. But the more that you step into this role, the feeling is going to become stronger and stronger. And even when you doubt and have moments in between, every return to that end state is going to tweak and rewire your self-concept that much more. So I want to share with you guys 4 things that I did that really helped me to overcome these fears and doubts and really helped my faith to skyrocket. The first thing that I did, and where I really focused, was in normalizing doubt and understanding what doubt actually is. As I said earlier, doubt is not the enemy. It is nothing that we have to fear. It is nothing that we have to try to force ourselves away from. It is just a signal. It's the voice of the old self, built off of years and years, if not decades, of logic, reason, memories, and past failures, trying to keep you safe by sticking with what is familiar and normal for you. So when you start to begin changing your self-concept, when you begin to entertain new ideas and new beliefs, you can expect some part of you to push back on that. This is the most normal and natural thing in the world. It's what the ego does. It is what we are designed to do. So the first step isn't to get rid of doubt. It is to understand it. It is to normalize it. Because we're going to have a very hard time dissolving something that we still don't understand and we still fear. But the moment that we stop fearing doubt and we start to see it for what it is, just feedback and an echo of your past self, you stop giving it power and you can take that power back. And expanding on that first point, the second thing that I really focused on is detachment from doubts. This is through understanding that you are not the thoughts that you have. You are not the beliefs and assumptions that you hold. You're not your memories. You're not your circumstances. You are the awareness behind all of that. So when you have that voice in the back of your mind that starts going off and whispering those fearful things to you, things like, this is never going to happen, you're being delusional, what if this doesn't work, what if you waste all your time and nothing changes, all of that is just noise stemming from old programming and beliefs and assumption. And the key here is when we notice that little voice and we notice ourselves starting to react to doubt, is to not try to fight it. Don't try to push back against it. Don't try to flip all your thoughts. Don't try to argue with yourself. Simply be aware of it for what it is. That your doubts are not you. You are aware of them, but they are not you. They do not define you. We simply notice it and we acknowledge it for what it is. It's the old story. It's that old aspect of our self-concept that is resistant to change. Once we stop identifying with that inner critic, we ultimately start to rise above it. The third thing that really helped me to overcome my fears and doubts was to build my faith in this law through self-observation and documentation. One of the very best ways that we start to build faith in something is through our own experience of it. The more that we experience something, the more that we actually live it through our eyes, the more and more we're going to begin to trust something. We can read all of the books, we can watch all of the videos, read all the success stories, visit all the blogs and Facebook groups from here until infinity, but until something is actually experienced, it is going to be difficult to truly maintain the faith that this is possible for you, which is why self-observation is such a crucial part of this practice, because it is through our observation that we will begin to really see the law in effect, and that the law is always working for everything. That it is true when Neville says, your experience is the result of your innermost beliefs and assumptions. And I've made a few videos talking about building faith through self-observation. One of the videos I'll link to is up here, and I'll also have it down in the description box below, because this is a whole topic in and of itself. But essentially what we have to remember is that your ability to observe your inner world and your outer world is key here. Part of the reason that we have so much doubt is that we are not seeing the parallels between what we imagine and what we experience in the 3D. As you become more increasingly aware of your thoughts, your thought patterns, your reactions, your circumstances, and how you feel in the day-to-day, and then observe the circumstances and what is happening around you, inevitably you're going to see this is ultimately true. All of this are things that I have once felt or imagined and accepted as true. And because we live on autopilot 95% of the day, we often do not see this correlation. We often do not see this parallel. We are not aware of those moments when we are planting that seed and leaving that impression. Thus, when it comes to pass and when it is harvested and outpictured in 3D, it feels more like something random or a coincidence. But the more that we pay attention to what we are doing and what state we are occupying in the day-to-day, paired with what we are experiencing on the outside, you will see it, and your faith will grow. Taking this a step further is to begin to document your successful manifestations. Whether they are big or small or good or bad does not matter. Because the other part of the problem here is that we are prone to forget when we have left these impressions. We don't remember having this thought or having this reaction. Then when it is outpictured, it is easy for us to forget. Get yourself a notebook or a journal that is just dedicated to documenting your manifestations. Whether they are conscious or just something that you observe doesn't matter. Whether big or small doesn't matter. Good or bad doesn't matter. Commit to 1 month of documenting what you are aware of internally and what you experience on the outside. If you have a thought about something and then somebody says something in relation to that thought, write it down. If you think to yourself, man, I really want pizza tonight, it would be so awesome if we could make that happen, and then somebody offers to get you pizza, write it down. Whatever it is, begin to really take note. And at the end of the month, go back and see just how much you were aware of creating. It is going to be harder and harder to chalk things up to coincidence the more and more that we see these parallels. Because by definition, it cannot be coincidence if we see it happening over and over and over again. Lastly, the fourth and arguably most important when it comes to overcoming doubts is to persist and go to the end nonetheless. Commit to that feeling state regardless. Even if it feels impossible, even if it feels like it's never going to happen, even if we doubt, even if we fear it, doesn't matter. Commit anyways. And a story that I often remind people of is Neville Goddard's famous story of his trip to Barbados, which was the first thing that he consciously manifested. And for those who are not familiar with Neville's story about going to Barbados, essentially Neville Goddard wanted to visit his family in time for Christmas, but he didn't have the money or the means to do it. So at the time, he went to his mentor, Abdullah, and this was around September-ish, I believe. And he said to Abdullah, I want to go see my family. This is the first time I've wanted to go to Barbados in a very long time, but I don't have the means to do it. And so Abdullah told him, you want to go to Barbados? Then see yourself in Barbados. Now. You aren't going to Barbados. You're already there. You already went. And in this story, Neville describes that he had plenty of doubts. There were many times that he went back to Abdullah and saying that this isn't working. The days are getting closer and closer. December's right around the corner, and I'm no closer to getting to my goal. This happened so often that Abdullah had to resort to slamming the door in Neville's face because he could not be talking to Neville if Neville was in Barbados. And Neville had doubts constantly. But the one thing that didn't change was he committed to going to Barbados in his imagination anyways. Every day when he was walking through the streets of New York City, he would be in his mind walking through the streets of Barbados. And he did this consistently, nonetheless. And just a couple short weeks before the holidays, everything worked out perfectly. And he did manage to go to Barbados, and he went first class. And the point of that story is the importance of commit to that end state nonetheless. Commit to going there because it feels good, because it feels enjoyable. And why would we not want to imagine something that feels enjoyable and good? This is the true meaning of persistence. Persistence doesn't mean trying to manage your thoughts and force yourself to feel a certain way. Persistence is returning to that end state even after fears and doubts have shown up for you. Returning to that end state every time you forget. We keep choosing faith over doubt every time. And we keep doing so until that doubt starts to feel foreign to us. Because every time you go back to your imaginal act and every time you return to that feeling state, you are teaching your subconscious what normal feels like for you. You are reconditioning these old fears and these old stories. And once that new feeling is normal for you, once it feels natural to you, your outer world has to reflect that. That is the law, plain and simple. Because that is ultimately the objective anyways. It is that change to our self-concept until that new state becomes our dominant state. And once that happens, you will not have to lift a finger to make things fall into place for you. It will happen, and it will happen naturally. So the goal here is not to eliminate doubt or fight it or try to overcome it. It is to become so identified with that new state that even when doubt appears, even when that old thought and that old inner critic shows up, you just have to laugh because you no longer identify with that old version of you. The biggest shift and change for me was when I realized that doubt is not my enemy. It was an old shadow of a former self, and it was an invitation to remember who I really am. That I am not my fears, I am not my doubts, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not these old memories or identities. I am the awareness behind all of that. And that awareness is God. That awareness is the real you. And the more that I really started to pay attention to my inner state versus what I experience on the outside, the more that I committed to returning to that end no matter what, regardless of how it looked out here, less and less did I find myself hindered by my old fears and that old resistance. And when I started to see my doubts through that lens, I had more and more compassion for myself. I was no longer beating myself up or angry with myself for having these moments, because these moments are human and they happen for all of us. But through building trust in yourself and by commitment to returning to that end state no matter what, that is how you really start to expand on yourself. That is how you overcome all of your fears and old stories. And that is ultimately how you can manifest literally anything you want. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope this clarified a few things. I hope this helped give you some boosts and encouragement. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in checking out any of my resources, I will leave all of those links down in the description box below, including links to my coaching programs, my workshops, masterclasses, my blog, my podcast, my social links. Got a ton of resources down in that description box, so don't forget to check it out. Also, be sure to check out the other videos on this channel. Be sure to check out my Manifestation Fundamentals playlist. Each video is a different topic, but they all talk about how to manifest the best life ever. So until we meet next time, you guys, as always, please take care, be well, and never forget how powerful you truly are. Doubts and worries and resistance and all. Happy manifesting, guys.